All right, I think we're ready now to start the Aquaculture Working Group meeting for July 10th, 2024. For tonight on GIS. And you want to get started?
So it's not really a presentation. It's Ben got GIS going, and tonight I think was a good
We
starting
got to
point
start it.
for everyone to, yeah.
This is going to
and
be
it's
very
working.
informal, but I have been putting together a lot of different GIS maps, and one of them included was this sort of digitized version of an older water classification map along the shoreline. So I kind of went in and I buffered everything, and so we have the four different water, I don't know, what are they called? Water types, coast types? Water types. And so that's mapped here. And then I've also gone in and added some other layers that Paul was talking about and went into the main GIS database and DEP. So I have wet storage sites, which I put up there, highest astronomical tide, and seabird nesting islands, which are kind of down here. And then I'll be going in and making more layers and everything, but I am kind of at the disposal of the aquaculture working group and, to add more layers and see what is necessary. So, not much of a presentation, but a little primer there.
Jerry, have you done any work with any of the fishermen as far as?
He's got them all right here.
It does?
I think that's what they've, out of the two meetings.
That's the original.
Oh, yes, they put their stuff on there. Nice.
Scott Hall.
Looking at.
Is that one different than?
You could,
Oh, that shows what the colors
Yeah,
are. Okay.
Separate charts, each of the locations.
let me see if there's a, let me see if there's a board back there.
So this
You
was
see that?
having fishermen mark off.
I had about 16 separate fishermen, Cundy's Harbor, we did hours there. Darcy has hours, provided all the fishermen, and open public comment, explained what we wanted, what we were looking for.
So,
We told them
Colors are actually
preferences to stay within the last decade, no make-believe. Because the next guy's gonna call you out on it anyway, so
Yeah.
having them all in the same room, kind of like a truth teller.
staining.
It's like you're flinching, I know you're lying.
So it's marking fishing areas over the
It was
last.
marking historical fishing grounds, it was also marking the last decade.
Would it be easier for you to bring a table over to you? Can you draw it live in front of everybody?
We should be doing it every 3 months anyway.
This is a rough scale. I'm gonna suggest, like, right out of the gate, probably what you should do is get.
Big inshore and offshore fishing, I mean, that's a seasonal thing. That
Yeah.
changes- That can change within a month's period.
There's been a lot of changes, particularly in the heads of the bays over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. Pretty drastically. I mean, that's a big part of why we're here, today. And so, I mean,
it's
That
kind of
would
do that.
take time, yeah.
But what can we use him with right here, right now, to start? He'll get all this inputted for next meeting, or before, so people can review it. But what's not on this map?
Restricted currents.
Do you have a way to, I mean, do you have a site, or how do you evaluate that, I guess?
I believe I shared a program that was devised. Let me pull it up.
The Northeast Ocean portal data, do the same thing too.
Yeah, I should.
They should have the overlaps, it's all one, isn't it all one big?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna do any good anyway.
Yeah.
Does someone want to talk about like what's on there for anybody? Like,
Jerry's
Right
brought it.
now,
would it be, like, what's on the map?
Ideally, everything that was in blue, there's a index listed on the white copy, paper copy. The other one, it's the same color coordination, I believe it's what? Red is for lobsters, orange is, I can't see.
Seining.
Seining, you know, green was.
Shellfish.
Shellfish and scallop beds were in blue, I believe, pre-existing. A lot of that area to the southwest, specifically down below you and the Dolphin, I mean, Butler, I got another, that's on the other USBs that I can send over for him. As soon as I get back to the office in the morning, and I'll send everybody a copy of them too. But there's probably about 4 or 5 other maps that were marked out, but for the sake of me not having to get more laminates, I just erase and start again. So I will get the screenshots over to everybody. But like I said, that right now is only 16 fishermen, and you know how it is. You ask a fisherman anything right off the get-go, you know, it's only what they remember today, and then tomorrow it's 50 other things. So we probably ought to try to maybe have a couple more meetings with fishermen. You know what I mean?
Is that mostly in the Western Bay that you talked to?
No, I talked to, well, the first one was in Cundy's Harbor, and then the next meeting we had was over at Scouts Hall, over here on 123.
Obviously, one of the challenges is, just like Chris just said, the fishing may not be good in this particular bay now, but that's not to say that it's not going to be good in 10 years or,
Right.
you know, but I think that I think it would be important to identify the highest value, you know, fishing grounds. Not every single fishing ground, but what I would call the highest value where
Yeah.
the majority of people are fishing, you know, at the moment, that's all you can look at now.
Well, it's
You know, like the
also
trends.
why it will be important to continue to, you know, to make adjustments to this going forward, I think, on a, you know, on a fairly regular basis. And why it's important not only to, you know, identify good fishing grounds and good, you know, shellfish harvesting areas, but also areas that would be good places for the development of aquaculture farms, so that, you know, so that down the road, you know, if we say, well, you know, there used to be lots of lobster in here, but there isn't now, and then 10 years down the road, there's lots of lobsters there, but a bunch of, you know, aquaculture farms are there now, and guys can't get in there. You know, it's not that I think that, you know, we're gonna experience the type of boom that they've seen to the westward of us, you know, when it comes to aquaculture.
Should that be another substrate we should be asking the fishermen when we're asking them out general questions? I mean,
Yeah, definitely, I mean,
you mark one map, historical bottom, mark this map, the recent decade
Yes.
that you've witnessed.
yeah, it would
Get a-
definitely be,
I get like a suggestion. So for eelgrass beds, they kind of did a similar thing. There's like a map that's fairly recent, but they also have 2 other versions of older historical eelgrass beds. And I pull all of them up when I'm looking at, you know, sites for stuff. So I think we can do something similar with the fishing grounds. You can do like where everybody's working right now.
Right.
And then where everybody's been working in the last, say, 20 years or however long you
Yeah.
want to go for.
I mean, eventually it just kinds of, ends up being
There
everything,
should be
Yeah.
you
something
know?
that should be
But-
constantly updated.
Yeah.
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 We just don't want to mark the entire coast. I mean, we want to,
Right.
we
Try
want,
and
we
be
want to find some places.
practical.
So we can actually
Yeah.
tell people, like, if you want to lease, you should be looking in this area.
So I had a
Right.
question too for
Nowhere. It's like,
Jerry.
let's,
Yeah,
let's,
yeah.
let's try to figure out some answers here.
Yeah.
So the map that we have, that's a pretty large scale. When I worked with DMR to get like the shellfish areas mapped out, and some other lobster territory, I know you did a lot of work doing that, but if you're gonna talk to more people, how would you feel if I broke that into 6 different zoomed-in NOAA charts covering that area, and they could get really detailed, and draw like right up against depth contours, shorelines, that kind of stuff? It would really be nice to get that detailed
Yeah.
scale.
I'm thinking maybe, even if we dropped off white copies, even if it was in 6 separate piles of a breakdown, and just drop them off at all the co-ops, right on their door, and guys can just send them back to us.
Yep.
At their leisure. Just keep the color code index on there, just tell them, if it's historical.
Yep.
Label the top.
I also think,
H.
I also
Something
think you
easy
just
for
can't
them to
just
do.
like drop something off and have them fill it in, because it should be like identified with like, again, high value, like where are people,
Yeah.
like where's the most important, it's not like
Well, yeah.
the
That's why,
entire bay. I mean,
like
most
where
guys
are we
ask me
fishing
fishing, they
now
say,
versus,
it's gonna be like that other map, this entire bay. I mean, that doesn't really help us out a lot. I mean, that is the entire,
Oh, yeah, well, that's also historical fishing grounds
I know.
that they've been doing too. And it's like anything else, when you ask fishermen, it's like, you're better off trying to
Yeah.
pull teeth from a tiger.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the beast. So, I mean,
yeah, that's why it'd
getting
be
them that
important to
there
ask,
leisure
like,
would be the
where are you
benefit
fishing
for us.
now versus
where is not 90% of your gear? I guess would be the question, like where,
Well,
yeah.
100% of it. I mean,
Yeah, or
gotta
100%.
gotta set it somewhere.
But I mean, you set it,
Yeah,
10%
yeah.
to see, you go above the boat or whatever, below, whatever. but-
Yeah,
But if Ben can zero in what Jerry gives him, what Darcy gets to Jerry on the NOAA maps, we can zero in specific areas instead of the large scale. We can't
Yeah.
really figure out what, I see what we're looking at, but
So could we go over then what some of these priority areas would be?
well, yeah, actually.
I guess
Jerry-
the question is on this, I mean, can we overlap the colors on the same coastlines? Like, I guess that would be our real question, is where we're getting overlap.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, you
See
can
what I
turn
mean?
shapefiles on and off, so if he was gonna do like a presentation, he could you have a couple options. You can either code them with like hash marks and overlay them so you can see everything at once, or you can, if you're like, okay, we know that, we've already covered this is here, you can shut that one off. So there's a lot of flexibility with how you can project GIS stuff. The first job that we have is collecting all the data, so the stuff that you've got going on is pretty good. It'd be just nice to get it fine-tuned, because, like Billy was saying, some aquaculture farms might be, like mine, I'm snugged right up against a ledge. That's all I need, is just that little 30 feet up next to the ledge. So if the whole rest of the bay is being used for stuff, but you get a farmer that wants to hang out next to an edge, that's fine, but we just need to make sure that's reflected in the data that we're putting up there.
So when you're talking about overlapping zones, do you mean like, say we're looking at Birch Island here, and there's some aquaculture, I don't know, in this, on the right side here, just turning that on and off to see if it overlaps with these layers?
What are these, can you just quickly say what the different color classifications are for this stuff?
Yeah, so type 1, the red, is low-intensity uses, so possible uses include seasonal mooring associated with individual waterfront properties, transient anchorage areas, docks, piers associated with residential use, high-value shell fishing areas, and recreational uses in aquaculture.
So basically, red is the town saying there could be aquaculture here. Is that what you're saying?
This is from the 2011 plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what are the
Type
other
2
colors?
is multi-purpose waters, so common uses include small independent commercial fishing operations, recreational boating, sport fishing, small mooring areas, aquaculture areas, and residential docks and piers. Type 3 is high-intensity boating. Dominant type of boating activity, commercial or recreational, depends largely on adjacent land use and use at the access point. Land use might include marinas, commercial fishing, wholesalers, boatyards, town landings, and water-dependent businesses. And then type 4 is commercial and recreational harbors. Within these harbor waters, mooring fields are congested and include commercial fishing vessels and recreational boats. Landside, these harbors can be considered mixed use with residential homes, commercial fishing businesses, and other coexisting and sharing limited space. The visual quality of these harbors is important, and tourism is supported in these areas.
I noticed type 2 aquaculture was mentioned by name.
Type 1 and 2.
Type 1 and 2.
Yep.
Okay.
Take the Gosling's Grist, where it's identified for aquaculture. Is there a lobstering going on right in there also?
I mean, within the red shaded area, I mean, yes, in
Yeah.
areas, there's also aquaculture going on within, you know, so there's a lease. Do you want me to
Yeah.
go point at things?
Does he have the?
I'm just trying to I'm just trying to get a for example kind of thing going on here.
So like, you know, there's a fairly sizable lease up here on the shore, there's grassy ledges like right here. So the channel kind of runs up through. And there's some aquaculture going on up there, and then there's another fairly sizable lease over on the other side, or maybe a couple. But there's, you know, kind of a main channel that runs up through here that is still fished pretty hard at the beginning of the year, and then down towards Irony here, there's that channel that runs in through here where
Yep.
there's the mooring field there, and that still gets fished pretty good. I mean, my dad's still got gear up here right now. And then, you know, gear gets fished all around the bottom of it, and then there's kind of like a deep, you know, this whole bay kind of slopes across and is deepest along this edge, and so this gets fished pretty hard up along here, but then that kind of peters out when you get up towards the towards Upper Goose.
But-
And then there's, you know, there is some fishing up on the upper end of Upper Goose where the channel kind of wraps.
Yeah.
But-
But I can-
so I mean, you know, like, yeah, so there's, you know, I mean, there's aquaculture going on within that, there's lobstering going on within that, and there's probably, you know, certainly, I mean, there's probably areas within that would still be good, you know, could support another aquaculture farm or something, but yeah, so.
if these leases are hugged close to the island though. Isn't-
I mean, close to the island isn't always, in some cases, like there's, you know, really shallow water in between the two islands there, and that's kind of where like a couple have hugged in there. But it doesn't always mean like on that southwest end of the island, there was a lease proposed that, you know, they were like, oh, well, you know, we're up against but because of the way that the bottom works there, where it slopes, you know, kind of all the way down across that bay, right up to the edge of the island, it's where everybody wants to be is right on the, so, you know, there's, like you said, like, sometimes there's places where, you know, you want to be right up against this ledge, and that's fine, but then there's other places where right up against that ledge is where everybody wants to fish.
Yeah.
And maybe out in the middle of the bay, like, there is one of the ones on the west side of Lower Goose, west side of the upper end of Lower Goose, there's a lease that they put like fairly well out in the middle there. I know that like navigation was a bit of a concern with that one because it's just kind of, but it, you know, because it's out in the middle, it's less likely to interfere with any lobstering.
That's
so.
kind of why I want to see the more fine-tuned scale.
Right,
So you can
right.
capture
'Cause
stuff
it's
like
like-
exactly
'cause
that.
there's a
like,
lot of
okay,
places where-
It's just not the same for every piece of land. It's going to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of places where it's just out in the middle, you know, in that case with that lease on the southwest end of the Goose, I talked to the guy a bunch, and I had talked to some other guys that fished around there. And just talked about just going like over towards Buston's Island with it and just getting like over off Buston's Island a little ways with it into an area where nobody was fishing currently, so. But
Does he have access to the aquaculture stuff that you could bring up?
Yeah, do you know how to get to the, like on the DMR website, they have an aquaculture map that you can project a bunch of other layers that I was going to suggest. You actually download the shape files for them so you can incorporate this. Because there's,
Do you want me to look right now?
yeah, if
Okay.
you don't mind, since we have time.
because that can be important too, like,
Yeah.
you take an area that maybe has historical commercial fishing
then-
uses,
So
but
it's gonna
isn't
be
really getting
under-
used right now, that already has 2 or 3 farms that have been placed within it, like, maybe you wanna say like, all right, like this area, you know, like if you wanna, would be a
Web
good
map?
area.
It'd be good for monitoring anyways, for future
And then
access.
scroll down,
Yeah.
it should give you the box. And it'll
Oh,
populate
great.
in just a
But-
bit. And you can zoom right into
Certainly,
Harpswell.
you know, keeping,
Yeah.
if you identify an area as being.
Youth.
I've been locating Harpswell on a map for a long time now.
And, you're gonna wanna also turn on the layers, see the layer box up there, in the, nope, in the upper,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're gonna wanna grab, scroll down. You should throw on all the eelgrasses, so eelgrass 2010 and 2017, those should be layered on, like for stuff that we're gonna look at, eventually when we're talking. And then also the DMR public health, not the P90 scores, it should be public health classifications listed in there. Maybe that, yeah, the shellfish closures, I'm guessing they call it that.
So the shellfish one?
DMR public health shellfish closures, and, oh, maybe not that, blood closure or something. Just turn that one off, I guess. There'll be other layers, because you can go in and then download these as independent shape files, because that's the other stuff for us to look at that we should provide to people that want to come to Harpswell.
Yeah.
All of the closed areas around the ledges, around Oars and Bailey Island, that they can't have stuff, they can't have it over eelgrass or within 25 feet of an eelgrass bed.
Okay. That's
They
really helpful.
can't be within so many, 1,000, there's like 1,000-foot zone for no more than
Yeah.
4 LPA. So there's a lot of other good restrictive stuff that would be nice to be able to layer in there for people for the
Yeah, I was
discussion.
gonna
Yeah,
mention, like,
that's-
like, as it is currently, like, you couldn't put anything around like Bailey Island anywhere,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
like, so, there's a
you know.
lot of stuff that's already naturally limited by the other limiting factors.
Right.
So we can kind of still map out the fishing stuff, but let's focus on the areas where it's vulnerable.
Right,
So why not, Chris, why not around Bailey Island?
There's
There's a water
Yeah, so
quality.
water
Oh.
quality is prohibited within 500 feet of pretty much the whole shoreline. It's all overboard discharges, so you can't have any shellfish aquaculture there.
Okay.
There are a
And
lot of overboard discharges. Why is the reason?
It's because,
Because they haven't been tested.
no, it has nothing to do with testing. The FDA considers it a documented pollution point, whether someone lives there or not, whether it's treated or not, whether it's, they consider them little mini pollution points. Doesn't matter if the water quality is immaculate, it's gonna be closed. And that's pretty much, that's it. That's the whole coastline
Yeah.
of Oars and Bailey Island.
Can you shut that, is that the PSP?
Yeah, I think
overlay?
that might be like a, yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
PSP closure, the
Should I turn that
DMR
off?
shellfish closures, yeah, shut that off, thanks. But it's all of them, they're all bundled together, so.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
that
so he can
also
pull
has
up the, when he pulls up the shape files, he can sort it for, or I can, whoever's
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
this next time. So we can just show the pollution closures.
Yeah,
So would it be worth saying we probably put up one chart, do an overlay with the eelgrass, and probably the current structures to hand out to everybody? And then this way we're not trying to jam everything on one chart because it's just.
yeah,
gonna be a
yeah,
mess.
yeah, yeah.
Confuse people more than it's gonna help.
And I'll
Yeah,
print
no,
out,
you don't
like-
need to be handing out like the finished product. They-
I mean, DM already has that, this is what they offer, part of the process in picking any type of aquaculture.
Yeah, but that, people don't always go here. It, like, if our goal is to kind of stop, like, someone who wants to put 12 LPAs and they think that's a great spot, and they're gonna get, they'll get everybody all agitated, and it may end up turning out that, like, in the review process, DMR figures out, oh, well, you're too close to the eelgrass beds, or that's a closed area. Like, it would be nice to kind of stop the chaos before it starts as much as possible. So if we're handing people information to say, hey, before you even start, if you're gonna put, or look at putting aquaculture in Harpswell, here's information we want you to have, and that might actually turn a bunch of people in another direction before they even file an application, if they understand how limited it is and what the smaller areas are that they really should be looking at.
Let's add on to that, because I think that is something we're seeing in the Harbor Waterfront Committee meeting. We're seeing a lot of these applications come in, and they're not great locations.
Yeah.
And they've already done the application, paid the fees, gone through the process, and it would have been nice if they had, we don't tell them where to go or what to do. So I think that is a valid point.
Yeah.
So based on the conversation, it sounds like the kind of most important layers would be aquaculture sites, existing water classifications, eelgrass, and then public health closures, kind of at a fine scale.
In the
Yes.
commercial fishing,
Yeah, and
additions,
fine-tuning this
as
stuff.
that gets,
Yeah.
yeah, that'll continue to get.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
got less, like, right now, we're building the importance of that. Nobody else, that's not like an officially recognized layer necessarily, but we're gonna make it one because,
Ben, can you repeat what you just said about the list?
Yes, so it,
Eelgrass, pollution points, what?
eelgrass, the water classification map for this one, aquaculture, existing sites, public health closures due to pollution, and then commercial fishing zones.
Thank you.
You should also add conserved lands, and there's not,
State parks.
yeah, there's like other things that are factored into, like the seabird nesting areas, technically, they're supposed to not let
Yeah.
anybody get too close to
I have
those too.
those.
So those were layers that were on there too.
Okay.
Some of the islands.
Some of that
Darcy,
stuff
I
is state
can't-
jobs too. I mean, we're really
Yeah.
trying to identify
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
are
I mean-
important to
Yep.
the town.
I
Right.
can't hear, Darcy, can you say what you just added?
Yeah, like the conserved lands and seabird nesting areas, those are other factors that DMR is supposed to consider when they're approving a lease area. They're not, people aren't supposed to be too close to those, or they need to get special permission if they're gonna be there, so even if it's just letting people know, like, hey, if you wanna put a little farm here, you're gonna have to get permission from, you know, the federal government, because there's an eagle's nest within 4
So
miles.
how, I think I hear what you're saying is head it off before there's,
Yes, let's give
But how would
everybody
you-
all the information up front, and we
okay,
could.
but how would you get it to people?
I
Because
think-
you're just saying, Dave, you went to DMR to figure out areas, I
Could
think.
Yeah,
we
I think
publish
that's
this
not-
online?
But you're saying not everybody does that, so how would you get the word out?
I think Harpswell as a town can have something similar to the DMR aquaculture web map, but it will be all of our stuff on it that we're talking about. These layers that already exist, as well as the fishing layers that we're gonna create, and anything else that's important. And then I think it's, maybe DMR will work with us and let applicants know, or we can work with Sebastian Bell or other people that are out there and just pass the word out there. If you are thinking about doing aquaculture in Harpswell, you should go to the town website and check this out first, before you even fill out an application.
I also think that it would be beneficial to print out, once the map is done, a large one, and then a couple blown up ones in maybe more, popular areas, and put them in the office somewhere, so people can
we
reference.
As the ordinance is currently written, we will have to do that because I don't think a digital version can be voted on in town meeting format. I think it has to be
A print or something.
print, yeah.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, see, I thought originally this was for us to identify fishing grounds, restricted currents. As it stands right now, DMR has all this information when it comes to going through the aquaculture process and the permit process. Like, even though they offer so many years of the eelgrass map, and if you accidentally use an older image, they'll kick it back to you, when they should use the most previous. That should be part of their program, but they don't offer that. You can simply just put in an image of eelgrass that was outdated, and they'll bounce it back to you, and it'll cost you another 3 or 4 months in the process.
Yeah.
Why they do that, I don't know. They should only have the most recent imagery up there on the eelgrass.
Well, but I'm saying if we're looking at wanting to have people really think hard before they site a farm in Harpswell, it's nice for them to know, here's all the potential restrictions for where you want to be.
Yeah.
The current eelgrass, historical eelgrass, you still have to answer the question on the form, like, have you checked for eelgrass, and what was the month, and who checked, and
Yeah.
that'll still be part of the process. But if we're putting all of the information up there to kind of show people,
This is a tool that you have to use as an applicant
Yes.
coming into aquaculture.
Yeah.
You don't even try to attempt it without getting on this aquaculture map.
yeah.
So the state expects people to check themselves.
And they really
essentially.
don't necessarily, like, some people do, some people don't. It's a mixed bag.
But it sounds like if they had only eelgrass from 2015 and it was different.
Yeah, and they
if-
map
if they
different
didn't know,
areas.
like,
Yeah, they map different areas
not
in
up to
different
that.
years and not the whole state, so it's a little
Yeah.
confusing. But if we just focus on Harpswell and we make part of our job to create the fishing territories and also pull in all of the other existing data and be able to hand that or have it really available in people's faces for anyone who wants to come here, it makes it way easier to avoid uninformed people submitting a bunch of applications that are contentious. It gets everybody uptight, and at the end of the day, they may not end up getting approved anyway, but it created a lot of dissent, and it
Absolutely.
would be great to avoid that.
A deterrent factor.
Prevent fire instead of putting it out.
Exactly. We're going to prevent a lot of fires.
Is smoking.
As long as people know where to look for it.
Yeah,
That's
well,
always
and
the
that's why,
challenge.
like, I think we can maybe there's other ideas for, like, how to make this really
as part of the overlap.
Make people aware of it. I don't know the best way. I don't know if DMR would be willing to add this to their webpage where people go to the
Yeah.
application, and if it says, if you're interested in applying in Harpswell, you need to go here.
And I really like that idea. If the
I don't
state,
think-
if the state would do that, so that's a question.
We can
You
always
don't think
ask.
so, Paul?
We can ask. I don't think.
Like,
we'll
let's
do that.
get the
Might be a bill.
product, let's get the
That's
product cleaned
part
up
of
and
the-
looking good.
One thing that I thought about between meetings too was that, I mean, obviously the goal is to try and have a Harpswell town ordinance that DMR will hopefully recognize, abide by, but they have absolutely no lawful, like, they're not bound to do anything that we ask or that we have in ordinance.
I am wondering,
State
though,
waters.
if someone wants to install aquaculture, do they have to go anywhere on the Harpswell website or through the harbor master at all?
Well, do they come to your,
Harbor and
come
waterfront
to the
for
harbor and
LPAs.
waterfront?
Because I'm going to say, if they go through a Harpswell site or some sort of system, that's where we can say, hey, there's this
Not
map.
enough people do. I
Okay.
still think it would be great to catch them like on the outer edge of the galaxy before they come in here and decide that
So
they want to start poking around.
Theoretically, they don't have to be
There's-
somewhere where
no.
they would know that that the map exists.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
need to get this organized and easy to understand, and
Yeah.
then make it as available to as many people as possible.
Okay.
So somebody applies through the state and it comes to harbor and waterfront?
Only for-
Lease?
Only for LPAs, which is
Only
the
L-
lower
okay, that's
level,
what I
simple
thought.
ones, yeah.
So leases don't?
No,
No.
No.
Okay.
they bypass the
And
town.
Marine Resource takes a look at it
Because
also.
it's,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
it's state waters, so there's nothing.
Yep.
But I'm very hopeful that, you know, that DMR will tend to, you know, adhere to whatever ordinance we put in place. But that being just a hope, I was thinking that maybe we could, I don't know, start the process by maybe inviting our representative to come to a meeting or something to start to talk about the possibility of there being some change in law that I think it could be as simple as just a new law or an amendment that states that if a town has a ordinance around aquaculture or whatever, that the state has to defer to that or, you know, take that into consideration or however it was worded. But I think that, you know, us doing all this work just to have the state ignore it would kind of stink.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
so.
why we have Jay.
Huh?
That's
Yeah.
why we have Jay.
And so I just think now, early on, would, you know, if we could just start the ball rolling about, you know, maybe talking to somebody about how we could potentially impact the state so that DMR would actually have to pay
Well,
attention to what we've done here.
Timeframe wise, bills don't go in, the deadline is end of December.
Right.
So if the asking isn't helpful, that would be an option. But I think your state water, state regulations,
Well, I mean,
but you got to be creative, right?
well, right. And, I mean, you know, this, whatever ordinance comes, you know, or whatever changes to the current ordinance would come out of this wouldn't be voted on until probably next March anyway. But it would be, you know, if we could talk to somebody about legislative changes that could happen during the next session, that would be, you know.
It's nice because I think this is coming from a constructive place instead of like just being, you know, we're not complaining, we're
Oh,
trying
right.
to find a tool and a solution for this.
Right,
so
and I think, you know.
They
the-
might be more receptive to that than they have
The
been.
reason I've been
other-
so optimistic about this versus a lot of the meetings with DMR that I've been a part of in the past is that, you know, I think with the idea of more local control and input is just a win-win for absolutely everybody involved in the process.
Yeah.
And the more that we can do to influence the state to have to listen to what we say.
I mean, technically, we should have a foothold on it anyways, because the old mapping was, what, 13 years old now?
And they did honor it with that previous applicant. They did honor
And
that.
that was just it. So, I mean,
Right.
by giving them the
And
best available data up to
Yep.
date, I mean,
And I would hope that they
holds a lot
would
of sway.
listen, but, you know, they
it's
don't.
it's DMR.
It's DMR, they don't have to, and they seem to be pretty you know, one way one day and one way the next day, so.
Does anybody know how many municipalities thus far, whether I think it's 7 or 8, that have created their own ordinance, a moratorium on aquaculture? And do you guys know if there's any conflicting
Well,
applications at this time?
I don't, other than Waldeboro, but I say for the, again, they're meaningless. Because it's state water, state regulations, so the constructive, let's figure it out, let's work together
Yeah.
is much more productive.
Yeah, and if, you know, if we could,
I just want to make sure that whoever we invite, we already have a guideline, or at least a guideline that we've drawn up,
Right,
you know, to propose for the DMR to step in.
right.
I mean, right now, we're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse until we figured out how we want to site, you know, I mean, if we're gonna do eelgrass overlays, past and present, and then do counter currents, to try to find out where the high nutrient values are, that should be one section. Maybe that's the first thing we hand to the applicant after, you know, when they go for the state application. It's like, well, these are already hot zones that we're already feeling, that's just a no-no. And then, you know, a guideline after that, and fisheries overlaps.
I
You know,
think they should
kinda
just
do
have
both.
all of it. I think they should see the overwhelming image of how busy Harpswell is and how much area is already used and occupied by other things or other stuff that's gonna not make it.
I just
great.
want to make sure that we weight the criteria on, well, how many overlaps do we gonna have to have before we just say no? to
I
one
mean, well,
thing?
in theory, almost any of them would be a no. They can't cite it within 25 feet of an eelgrass bed. They can't cite it in a pollution-closed area. They can't cite it if there's more than LPAs within 1,000 feet of them. So I think all of them are important. And then adding on the new information that we're putting together with the, you know, critical commercial fishing areas that's the new stuff that,
So that should be something, maybe we should apply all that current stuff on one chart, then we can figure out zones where we significantly need to figure out, well, how many overlaps in the areas that could possibly be. That would kind of end the discussion a lot quicker, would it not?
I think you can, well, like we were saying, you can have a interactive map similar to what the DMR has, where you can just have they can turn on or off any of the layers they want to look at. And so that way, if you have them all on, it's going to be pretty obvious the only little areas that are not covered by something. And that would be the places where if someone thought they wanted to do aquaculture, those little places would be where they should be looking. And in some cases, they may be like, oh, well, I don't want to go there because I don't have easy access to get there, or that's not where I really wanted to be. So again, like, I feel like if we just load all this information up front, it's going to help to avoid some.
I'm just seeing, I mean, once we put all these overlaps in there, we're gonna find out real quick in a hurry of where siting capability could happen. I just don't wanna see a free-for-all for the scraps.
I don't think it'll be a free, like, as an aquaculture farmer looking for where to site stuff, I don't think it's gonna be a free-for-all. I don't think there's a ton of places left in Harpswell that are actually,
That's my only
Appropriate.
concern. I mean, if we only have a handful of sites left, I mean, is that something we just, the highest bidder, or is that something we push for more?
I mean, that's not really our job, though. Our job is to get the information on a map.
Yep.
Before because they're coming. People are coming. The water quality in the Western Bay and the other side is crap, so they're coming, they told us that, you know,
Yeah.
Freeport, that whole area is, there's not, they don't get the water flow that we have, and, you know, they're definitely gonna come. We wanna find out if they are gonna come, where we would want them to go.
that was kind of a first push to those however many LPAs at
Yep.
Little Wilt.
12.
Yeah.
yeah, what happened with those? Are they in
We
the
just said it
process,
probably
or?
wasn't.
Yeah, we denied them.
And I
Like,
still,
And they honor, like,
Yep,
they were good with that?
Yeah, they were actually, we're gonna reach out to Chris, I don't know if they ever did, but.
none of the applicants ever reached out. Yeah, this is another thing that I need to follow up on. I dropped the ball on. But none of the individual applicants reached out to me, but I did receive a call later that night after that Harbor and Waterfront meeting from that Keith Butterfield fellow. And he wanted to meet and talk about stuff. And then I was supposed to get back to him and I didn't, so I should follow up with him. But I didn't hear from any of the applicants. But yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, they said it themselves that, you know, I mean, that's what they were looking for, was to get out of what has become a pretty busy aquaculture area, you know, over towards Freeport and find some
This was actually.
better water flow. Obviously, that area just wasn't gonna
I think it's
gonna
like 15
work,
days.
but,
So we're actually gonna have to like
By-
scroll through the entire town, like we're gonna have to go, we have to start doing that. I mean, when we did the shoreline rezoning task force, we actually went and scanned the entire thing. And again, this tool allows us to skip over a bunch, because we know that we don't have to worry about this area, because it's
Right,
closed or
once you
whatever.
once you have that, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I mean, we ought to, I was kind of, I don't know how zoomed in you need to get as far as like printouts, but I mean,
Well, like,
I'm
If you're sent
envisioning
here
like.
like along a depth contour, it'd be
Yeah,
nice to capture
I mean,
that.
can you, when you zoom in on this, does it go to chart,
Yeah,
okay?
there's
you
a
keep
Noah
going.
chart underneath.
It'll keep,
So that's what we need.
it'll
We
keep
need the
getting
bottom
more,
contours.
no,
Then it
now we're
shuts
out.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's just.
So it doesn't have a
Little
deep,
But we're gonna have to go.
so it doesn't have a detail.
No, but back it out to the depth contour.
Well, I know, but that's not
It's-
particularly,
We're currently.
yeah.
restricted.
That's not very detailed at all.
The resolution isn't great.
I think we can
So that
address
should be
that,
part
though.
of
You can make it so you can zoom.
Yeah.
I
can-
mean, I wanna be able to see at 2/10 of a mile,
We can
like,
capture little deep spots, and we can, this is not set up to do that.
Okay.
Because that's how they put these.
oh,
things
all
in.
right, yeah, yeah.
We can have ours that way, or like, whatever, the paper
Yeah.
versions that we work on. If it's easier for you guys to mark up a
Yeah.
paper chart, I can zoom in as
Yeah.
tight as you want and print those out.
That's as tight as
That's-
it gets
It's
right
like,
there,
Yeah.
which
We
is
can-
that's
It's
pretty
better, but we can
close.
go as tight as you need to be to capture all that stuff, because that's important. That's gonna add the value to the information that we're collecting. If we can show DMR how we documented all of this stuff, that, hey, it's the fishermen, and we went to this scale on NOAA maps, and
Yeah,
it carries some weight. It's not like, we just decided this whole bay is commercial fishing, and that's why we don't want people there. That's not really enough, but
Yeah.
that level of detail and the amount of work that we're gonna put into this, I think is gonna hopefully be enough to
yeah,
demonstrate that we're trying to be constructive and cooperative and just put the information out there so that people can choose better where they want to put stuff.
yeah. I mean, luckily, I think a big factor in why we haven't had more of a boom when it comes to aquaculture is the lack of like a large commercial town dock, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
if
not
we
a
had-
lot of
If we had a
access points.
if we had a town dock that looked like Freeport's or something, then I
Yep.
think you would have seen dozens and dozens more
We wanna do this
leases at this point
Before we go to
because.
the Mitchell Field ramp.
Well, it just, you have to have, I mean, that's a part of, is that a part of the lease requirements that you have access within
It's
a
not written in
certain-
there, it's kind of on your own, but like, that's what I'm
Okay.
saying, if people.
But
come
anyway, I
in
mean, you
and
have to have
realize-
you have to have somewhere to come and go from, If you didn't, if you weren't working at a Mark's Wharf,
Right,
then you wouldn't have a lease where you have a lease,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
you wouldn't have a lease in where your lease is if you weren't working out of the wharf
Yeah.
So you have to have somewhere to come and go out of, and we, as a town, like, if you're just somebody driving down here
Right.
from Wyndham or
They-
something, then.
It is asked in the process where you leave from and how you're accessing it, if you choose to access it by shore, and what choices you have.
I think it's just asked as far as like the riparian stuff, it's asking if you're crossing anybody's
Oh, yeah.
property to get to
Oh,
your
yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
it might be another thing to point out would be the access points in Harpswell that are considered public launches. There's not that many, and so that,
On the western shore.
yeah.
Well, there's quite a few launches in town, there's just not much parking.
Parking.
Not much parking that goes with
Yeah.
it.
Right.
And,
But,
and over on the western shore,
Yeah, there's Lookout Point.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Yeah,
But there's
so-
not a lot.
I mean, some of the people that come in and put in applications, they're just undereducated. They maybe haven't thought all of this stuff through, so
Yeah.
if we can.
Well, and you're always gonna have people that, no matter how hard you try to put this out there, you're always gonna have people that don't look at it and submit applications to DMR. And, at the end of the day, it's just gonna be about us having something solid in ordinance that we can then say, DMR, look, this isn't gonna fly.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I think.
I mean, the
It's a
public,
layered
the outreach
approach.
part is
Yeah.
like the best case
Yeah.
scenario, but we also need to have the,
The backup.
right.
Do CEI and Island Institute have done trainings? Are they still?
Yeah.
It's,
And
Yeah.
if they are, do they help people with this?
we have somebody here from,
Yeah.
Olivia's back there, if you want to go speak to that.
Yeah.
Want to go up there, Olivia?
Definitely.
I'm thinking of another communication.
yep, that would be another
Cool.
place to push this
It
information
isn't
out.
everybody, as Chris said, it would be some.
Hi, I'm Olivia from the Island Institute. And I think maybe Dana could probably speak to this a little bit more for the current training programs, but Island Institute had an aquaculture business development program, but it ended around, I think, 3 to 4 years ago, so we're not currently running any aquaculture programs, but I know Shared Waters just finished up, and I think that's one of the most current training programs. And that's the aquaculture hub, I believe, that goes through Maine Sea Grant and other groups. I think is that the only current aquaculture training program that runs? Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
I would say a lot of the applicants don't even know that these programs are around. I think they just come from the outside and look at the coast of Maine and they're like, I want to
Yeah, I'm
farm
just
oysters
thinking
here.
if there are any place you can put the word out.
Yes, yeah.
But not those anymore.
So next steps, he's gonna start generating a map,
Yeah.
and then we need to get him the constricted waters information, right, so he can download that?
Yeah.
Can you put that, or is that something you can send him like on the phone or draw or do it
Yeah,
on
I
paper?
can, I can share this,
Gotta find the most updated.
yeah, this
Okay.
hasn't been updated in a while, but I was thinking, that probably the best approach would be using high-resolution remote sensing to characterize suspended particulate and constricted currents, and they stay out of it. Because you know, you got impediment of navigation, that's criteria. Why wouldn't you have impediment of constricted currents as well? Those constricted currents are providing nutrients for all native, wild, you name it, other aquaculture ventures. So it should be a spot that, you know, they're not allowed in. Simple as that.
So how do we get that information?
Well, it's a good question.
Because the state, it's not available on the state site, so we wanna try to find the information the state doesn't have, which is historical fishing grounds, highest value fishing grounds, and
I'd
constricted
have
currents.
to look at the ocean portal data, the Northeast
Yeah.
Ocean portal data.
Well,
They do a
that,
lot of
I mean, that
analytics
combined
on
just
maps.
with your expertise, you know, David, when it comes to, you know, where the productive flats are at this point and what, you know, which ones have constricted currents that, you know, are opt out of them, you know, I mean, it's,
Yeah, I'm not so much interested in, you know, these constricted currents that land up on our flats, because we don't have a whole lot going on our flats right now. The Harpswell's like in the worst position it could be right now when it comes to shellfish. My biggest concern is, like, you know, even deep water constricted currents going in and out of a bay, in and out of every body of water. It should just, yeah, shouldn't be allowed.
yeah. But I mean, you know, because adjacent to productive, you
Yeah.
know, what few productive flats there are, I would
Yeah.
think would be of most concern.
Yep.
But,
I mean, are there any flats in town that are productive, or are they all just not producing right now?
Like, you got Cohog Bay, but that's all based off the geographical shape of it.
Right.
Like West Bath, you know, is another one.
Yep.
The basin in South Harpswell, Long Cove, but Middle Bay,
Done.
life ceased to exist. We've got a natural set that's in there, and knock on wood, it stays.
Yep.
Hopefully, we don't get another algae bloom that we had in 2022 and wipe out the rest of it.
But again, maybe we identify those four you just named and saying, these are the last
Right.
four that are, you know,
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
I mean, is, you know, yeah, whatever
I
we've
don't
got
know.
left is kind of
Yeah.
of importance that, you know, and like you say, Cohog Bay, well, you know, obviously you can identify either side of Pole Island as
Yep.
pretty much being the constricted current that, you know,
Yeah.
feeds
Yeah.
that bay, and so either side of Pole Island, in the, you know, in the channel, either side of Pole Island, not that, like you said, for other reasons, like navigation, and for
Yeah.
other reasons, those places probably wouldn't be the best, but, you know, you could, I certainly should identify, I would think, any area like that,
No, I mean, Cohog Bay, as a harvester, we should all be very thankful of Cohog Bay. It's got the biggest, it's got the highest density of crabs. It does get very warm, but because of its shape and where the mouth of it bottlenecks, I think it just retains all spawn that gets released in that bay.
Wow.
It it's like, we've tried, we can't exhaust the mud there, the product. It
Really?
just- Yeah, the harder.
But people don't fish up there anymore, really, right? They don't fish traps up there anymore, really.
No, no, the bay's gotten really warm, too warm.
Which, makes it, could make it a desirable place for aquaculture as well,
Yeah.
but because it's one of the last places that, we have a productive clam flats, that,
Yeah.
maybe it's like, okay, well, not here, not here, not here,
Score that higher on the.
Like, well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's obviously a lot of the things that make an area a good area to potentially site an aquaculture lease also make it
Yeah.
a good area for those natural species. And, it's important to protect what we have left,
Yeah.
for sure.
I've got a question about water classifications. So we've got 4. We talked about maybe adding another 1 or 2 possibly. Is there a size limit to how far those zones go out? Can it be entire, because I know on the map it goes out like
Yeah, I had
250
a
feet or
question
something
about
like
that
that?
too. Is that like defined anywhere, or is that just, you
We,
guys
we
eyeballed
can,
it,
we have
or-
the town boundaries, we definitely
Like,
have
there's
that.
town boundaries around the entire town, or just with the Brunswick side?
The entire town, yeah, which the Casco Bay Shellfish Work Group already did that with GIS, which we can steal. It
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay,
But-
so we can just have it be not like a.
comes out, goes right to
Yeah.
halfway rock, cuts in and goes up the river.
Right. But, so my question is should we be thinking, just as we go through the process, do we want to add another 1 or 2 zones that maybe identify something other than just like a marina or a commercial fishing pier or something else? Because right now, you can't put aquaculture in a spot where there's high activity essentially. It's not a great place for it. But there may be other places in town where there's not high activity where we do want to protect it. We could say this zone is whatever because of, shellfish or something like that. So we should just be thinking about that. If we want to add another.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can always change the size of the buffer there to
Okay.
reflect any changes, yeah.
Yeah, I would think at the very least, there will probably be some rewording of the classifications that, whether there be 4 classifications or 6 classifications, but I would think, we could change a lot of the wording of it to not just be so general about it being high usage or
Have you guys
medium
discussed
usage,
that in
but
any
the-
other meetings, like the changing the, fine tuning those definitions, like? or
In
is
the
this kind
harbor
of
and
the
water
first-
We
front.
just keep going in circles.
Yeah.
It's been busy.
Billy, are you talking about classifications on the map?
Yeah.
Thanks.
on the-
And also the definition, so if you actually, each zone has a definition that Paul was reading, but again, it's kind of like,
How did you guys come up with those initially?
there was a working group that
There's a
did,
man in the room who can answer that question.
not a West Star, at the school, basically had workshops and people just kind of figured it out, but
Yep.
it takes quite a bit of time. I mean, all this stuff takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to do a good job.
But certainly, commercial fishing obviously would be, one of those new categories, so to speak. Well, I mean, I guess it speaks to commercial fishing in some of the
Some of it.
Well, you could say
existing ones, but.
super high-value commercial fishing.
Yeah.
Make sure that, that they're trying to choose a good site, that they get input from the person, I don't know,
Yeah.
something, so they're like, geez, there's something going on there, I should pay attention to that.
But-
Maybe have someone that fishes there or whatever.
Yeah, I think
maybe-
having the map is a lot nicer than having them say, I didn't see any buoys when I was over
Yeah.
there, it's,
And-
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it gives, at least as a town, I don't know, like, maybe we want pictures to support, but,
I think
because.
trusting fishermen to say, this is where I set gear, or this crack is where there's lobsters, or
Yeah.
this deep hole is where I put stuff.
So DMR has never taken that
They, I know.
as
they-
evidence in the past.
I think
And
us
so-
being
and
as
so-
organized as we are, I think we have a shot at them
Right.
accepting it.
Obviously, as a town, if we as a town say this
Yeah.
area here, is fished, blah, blah, blah.
Because that's the thing, we're
Hopefully
vetting it.
DMR, but as individuals,
Right.
it has never mattered to DMR.
But it's
No.
different if you're not talking about a specific lease or license that you're opposing. You're talking about,
Here's where our areas
It-
are.
Well, I know, but it's gonna come down to
it's
but
but
come down to the specific leases that are applied
It is,
for.
but I think doing this proactively is a whole different story than, I don't want that lease there. because you've set this is where a lot of high-value fishing, this is where
Right, yeah,
eelgrass
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So it puts you, I think it's a constructive and better position to
And if
be
it's
in.
codified by the town at a town meeting and the whole town of Harpswell agrees,
yeah.
these are the areas we think are important, we'd rather not see stuff put there, I
Yeah.
think it'll go a lot further with
Oh,
the
yeah,
owner.
yeah,
100%.
for sure.
Yep. That's kind
Can't
of the
just say
idea.
no.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
yeah, hopefully the,
Wolf's at the door.
Next meeting.
Is it at 5?
yeah, I don't know if we need to get as specific as even like, saying specifically like this is
I think we should.
lobstering
I
here,
think
there's
it's-
clamming here, there's, I mean, I guess the more specific
Yeah.
you get,
The better. If we're doing this, let's do it right, let's do a
Yeah.
good job.
right.
So-
It's just a lot of different colors and hash
All right.
marks and this and that, but like,
I guess
it's gonna be a lot for people.
we're gonna look for getting more charts and maps out to
Yep.
the public.
I mean, I wonder if
Yeah,
if it would be better use to maybe invite, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but to try to identify 10 fishermen that would want to come to, like, we choose a bay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
invite 10 people to come and
Have them
say,
mark it
if
up.
you want to bring anyone, to come and we're going to allow you guys to kind of talk to us about this bay.
Mhm.
I mean, that's really the only way to get the information, other than it can't be all
Well,
Chris,
yeah,
and
that's
it
what
can't
he's
be all
done.
Jerry.
Right, that's what he's done.
But I mean, I think it's important for someone else to
Couple-
hear it all too. I mean, instead of someone just,
Well,
just going out
also,
and marking a map. I mean, it should be-
documenting that that's the process that we use to collect all this information
Right.
is another kind of solid
Right.
step that we can show DMR.
Because,
comment.
yeah, because otherwise, the towns know better than,
Yep.
than just, when it comes to DMR, so.
Yeah, for-
That would be
well,
my
for next-
suggestion.
Yeah. Well, for next meeting, though, Ben can get his charts together. David can get his flow chart information, whatever the latest that he's got to Ben.
I've written down all the layers that people were talking about here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You can chat for a few minutes afterwards, make sure you got everything
Look at
together.
a better map, gather more information.
Yeah, before we invite.
Yeah, right, exactly. Get the process set up.
Yeah, let's get everything up
Oh,
and
Matt's
running.
not here then, yeah. Trying to think, I was like, I know there was another lobster.
We don't have time for new
Carry the
business. Any public comment before we shut her to the door? Dana?
Quick one?
Yep, get up there.
Thanks. Hi, Dana Morris, Maine Sea Grant. Take this with a grain of salt, because I don't work for DMR, but my impression is that they would be very interested in the kind of information that you're talking about providing. And that secondly, there might be other towns who are thinking along the same lines. So if you've come up with a meeting process and a way to log this information, other towns are grappling with the same question, considering a moratorium or wanting to document their resources as they can kind of consider these things. So just, I guess, words of encouragement, really.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, in that case, we're adjourned.